Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to sort of clean up your file. Now you don't have to go through all of these. I'm just going to show you the right way to make sure that you have like a really nice clean file, especially if you're sharing it with someone else to work on with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the outliner, and I may have already done it. But you know, if you start building on an object and it starts storing all this stuff in your attribute editor, you can do an edit, delete all by type, history, and that will get rid of quite a bit of things in your scene here. But sometimes it doesn't get rid of everything. So I still have a lot of stored information in here. I've gone through and I've named all of my objects. Oh, maybe except this one. And I've gone through and named all of my objects in here. So this is sword mesh 1, 2. I think I've labeled all the books. So the official way to sort of have a perfectly clean, quote unquote, clean file is to, got a couple in here that I didn't name yet, is to clean out your outliner. I don't expect you guys to do all this because I know there can be quite a bit and it can be confusing, but I do want to show you the proper way to do this. So as I finish off labeling or naming all of my objects in here, I'm going to start to clean out my outliner. So I'm just going to go ahead and double check that I've labeled all these since I don't want to delete anything accidentally. But I should be able to tell as I'm going through my file. So I'm just going to make sure I see everything in here. And to get to your outliner, you go Windows, Outliner. And then it'll just pop up in a separate pop-up window, and then I just dock mine over here so I can always kind of access it. So I haven't really gone into detail with this yet, but I wanted to show you how to do this. So I've got my shield cube 4 here, and you're going to notice this is basically known as a null object. It's nothing. It's just stored information from when I was creating my original shield. So I can go ahead and delete that with no worries. And if you notice anything deleting, I like to just give it a quick little move as I'm doing it. I don't need my image plane anymore as I'm not going to change anything to the model. So I still have the shield image plane in there. I'm going to delete that. I have this shield P cube 6. I have a lot of these objects, and I can pretty much hold shift and select all of these, and I'm pretty sure as long as nothing moves on my shield, I know I'm good. And make sure before you start doing this process, do an edit, delete all by type, history. So I'm also going to do it to these ones, and I'm going to delete that. And I can pretty much be pretty sure that anything with this icon here at this point is probably just a null object. So that's a great way to sort of start to tell. And I've actually grouped these, so I know these are not I don't want to delete these because it'll delete that entire group. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to edit, ungroup, and do the same thing here. Edit, ungroup. So this way, I'm doing that so I can see inside of here, and I have one that's not labeled. And let's just take a look at which one this is. This is yellow. It's this one. So and it renamed it as it went from 9 to 10, so that's totally fine. I'd actually like to make this one, just so I keep them in order in case I ever need to grab them from here. I'll know exactly which one's which at least I'll have a good idea of which one's which. So now that I've got that done, and all of these books here are just simply the same mesh, except I just scaled, moved, and rotated each one, and they're all exactly the same mesh. And then I just did what is known as like a color swap on a texture. I just added it's a texture swap. I'm sure you've seen it with Mario and Luigi before in old NES games, where Mario and Luigi are the same exact sort of pixel character, pixelated character, where one is red and one is green. Same thing with like Mortal Kombat. You have Sub-Zero and Scorpion. One's yellow, one's blue. So they're just known as color swaps. Now I've just basically done that, except with quote unquote a texture swap, and I've just added and I just scaled and rotated and moved each one. So each one of these is actually the same exact mesh as the next one, just with slight variations as far as texture, size, rotation, and scale. I already said that. So anyway, that's a little bit on my books over here. So I've gone through here and I've basically labeled everything. So I don't have my lights labeled, but I'm okay with that for now. Area light 1, photometric. I do believe I did label these at one point. I may have saved it under a different file or something. And I believe this one would be like my backlight. So if I went in here and I typed in my channel box, this is my backlight. I believe this one is my key light. If I go to my attribute editor, I'll be able to tell. Intensity 10, 7, and 7. Okay, so this is my key light. And this is typically like a filtered light, your side light here. So I'm cool with that all being named. And then area light is fine because this is kind of lighting the entire area. Alright, so I've got everything named. I've started to clean this out. I've got all of my meshes, I believe, named. And I do still have a couple of these objects, and these are the image planes. There's still actual objects in my scene. You can see them here. So there's the image plane from when I originally started my sword. So these I can just go ahead and delete. And delete. And delete. So I've gotten rid of pretty much everything, I believe. And I can check in my outliner, and everything's starting to look pretty clean. So that's how you clean out your outliner and clean out your scene, so that the only objects you have in here are objects in your scene, and you don't have any of these null objects. It makes it easier for whomever is working on it next, or whoever you're working with on a project, to be able to easily tell someone, hey, it's sword mesh 03 that needs touch-ups on the texture or something. So anyway, that's just a little trick to clean out your outliner. Start by doing an edit delete all by type history, and then make sure you name everything. And you can start to name everything as you select these and make sure that they're real objects. And then as you do that, you'll start to come across some of those null objects. You may or may not, you never know. So it's just handy. Just resizing these to fit. So that's all I have for that. Now I want to show you another thing, and that's just my outliner. If I go into Windows, Settings, Preferences, no, General Editors, and Hypergraph Connections, let's see. And in my Hypergraph Connections, there's going to be a little button in here. And I'm going to do, under rendering, show materials. And in here, I've labeled all of them. So I have my sword Lambert handle material. And let me just show you. Let me dock this one also, if I can. and bring this over to the side. Oop. And it didn't work the way I wanted it to. I'm just going to leave it undocked because it's just going to be easier to navigate. So basically, if I were to select an object in here and assign an existing material, you're going to have all of this stuff in here. And a lot of these we aren't using because on the sword we added 4 materials, right? Just for learning purposes to see what they do. So in your outliner, or in your Hypergraph Connections, I know I don't need this one, and this is where I've gone ahead and I've labeled all of my materials also. So on here, if I go to my attribute editor, you're going to see I have crate material. I believe I named them all. Floor material, barrel material, stone window material, sword material 1. It's probably because I have a couple in there. So I'm going to go back in here, and now I know sword material is one that I want to get rid of. So I know I don't want this one, and if I hover over it, it's going to give me the name. So I don't need this one anymore. Book yellow material I do need. Sword Lambert, I don't need a Lambert. Blue material. Sword handguard material, I don't need that one. That one's my book gray material. I have yellow, blue, and gray. Yellow, blue, and gray. I have sword material 01. That's my original sword material. That's the blade from a previous project. I don't need this one either. That's the sphere on there. Crate textured blend. That was our original crate. And if you delete one of these, I might just show you what it does. If I delete this, you're going to notice they all turn bright green, and that's how you'll know. So just an FYI, if you accidentally delete one, that's how you'll know. And when it assigns a green material like that, it's because it doesn't know what else to assign, so it's just like a null material, and it just turns bright green. So if you ever see that while you're modeling, just assign a new material, whether it's a Lambert or whatever, and then it'll turn gray or what have you. So I don't need this. I don't need the checkerboard anymore. Shield texturing example 2, I don't believe I need that. And I'm going to delete that one. And now that I've deleted, where did it go? I just undid it, hopefully. Skull, I don't need that. Window 1, Lambert, don't need that. Stone material, I do. If I come back across it, it might have just went all the way to the bottom. Sword material. And if I delete this, let's just see what happens. This one. Oop. Okay, and this is sort of showing the connections. I don't know how I accidentally showed that. Maybe if I double click on it. Nope. And I'm just going to exit and do that again. Windows, Hypergraph Connections, General Editors, Hypergraph Connections, and rendering, show materials, sword blade blend. I don't need that one. I don't need that one. I don't need that one. I don't need this one. I don't need this one. And I'm just cleaning out my files, so this is just an official way to sort of do it. I don't need that one. I don't need anything that says blend. I want all of them to say AI standard surface. and I'll keep that one on for now. Particle cloud you can actually leave in there. That's one that they have by default, so I would just leave it. Lambert 1 I would leave also, because whenever you're begin to model something, you click on the sphere, cylinder, cube, etc. It's going to automatically assign Lambert 1. If you don't have Lambert 1 in your scene, it's going to start modeling it as that bright green I showed you as I deleted a material. Delete that one. And now I'm just going to double check. I'll exit this just momentarily and see if I label this sword material. It's labeling as sword material 1. So I know I have another sword material in here. And rendering, show materials, shield material, sword material. Let's delete that one. And now that I've deleted that, whenever you're trying to name something, it's because something else was named after it. Now I can change it just to sword material. So if you ever kind of get this and you're like, I don't have any objects in my scene, name that, and it keeps renumbering it, that's why, because something in your scene is named that. And I'm just going to continue here and just clean this out just a little bit more. So I have my Lambert, book blue, book gray, and book yellow. So the books are good. I have my bookshelf, that's good. I have my torch, barrel, floor, wall, sword, stone window, shield, crate, and this one, shield blinn SG21 or whatever, I'm going to delete that one also. And now I have in just my scene, I have just the materials I'm using in this scene. I don't have any extras. I don't have any of the checkerboards in there that I was using previously. I don't have any of the materials I was using on my sword from that one lab we did where we added 4 materials to it. So I've cleaned out my materials in here. Now I'm going to show you something else. If I go to rendering and show textures, this one's going to be a lot more. And what these are the file names. So I'm just going to minimize that for now and just show you. This you definitely don't need to do, but I want to show you anyway. So under color, if I click here, there's usually like a file name, and this is going to be create diffuse. Oh, and I name it file, so I know it's a file. Alright, and I need to go through all of these, create specular file, and create normal file, and I would do this for every single one. And just make sure they're all. I've gone ahead and I thought I named them all, but as soon as I click on one, of course I didn't. So I'm just try to, if you want to go this route and clean out your file names also, this is a great way to do it. So now in my show textures, floor normal file, and it's going to show up in your attribute editor. Floor diffuse file, floor specular file. So these are all the floors. Now I have bookshelf diffuse, bookshelf. This is just book gray because I have the gray book. Create specular file, create diffuse. So window checker, I know I don't need this one. I hope it doesn't zoom me out every time I do that. These skulls, I know I don't need, and it looks like it is because it's rearranging them all. File 14, let's see what file 14 is. File 14 is nothing, so I can delete that one. And this is how you would go about cleaning out your texture files. I wish it didn't zoom out every time I deleted one because it kind of makes it a little bit difficult, but as long as you name them all, you should be able to figure out quickly which ones are which. So I'm just going to continue at the top and just start scrubbing through here and looking for anything that looks. I know I don't need checkerboard files. And this is just little stuff that can essentially make your file size smaller. Not much. In the outliner, definitely. If you have a lot of stuff, and I guess if you have a lot, it depends on how many of these you have. But this can definitely help. And I can all right. If I hold Shift, I can click more than one. So that's what I'll do from now on. I don't need this shield texturing or this one or the checkerboard. And I'm going to leave that one for now. I'm going to delete those ones, and you'll see how much smaller in length my list is getting. I saw one in here. It was like crate 1, etc. I want to see where this one is. Create diffuse file. Create diffuse file. So I'm going to go ahead and delete. Where did it go? Create textured file 1 and see what happens. And I just need to make sure I didn't delete anything that I didn't want. Create specular file. Create normal file. So we're good there. And just continue all the way through. And I'm almost done with this. Sword specular file, sword normal file. So I like to add the word file. I like to add an extension, so whether it's a mesh, material, file, things like that, layer, group, if we have joints in a scene or anything. So I'm just going to continue going through here. I know I don't need this one or this one. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say that one also, because and if any of these that I delete, I'll have to go ahead and come back to and reassign the material. So on the shield, I'm just going to make sure all these are good. And I'm just checking the file name. This one, it just appears right here, so that's good. And then the sword, I think I had a couple extra ones that might, just sword normal, sword specular, and sword diffuse. I may have seen a torch one in here that I wasn't sure about. Okay, so I think I'm pretty good on that. Did I close out of it? So I'm going to go to Windows, General Editors, Hypergraph Connections, and then Options, AI Standard Surface. Okay. Torch material. Alright, perfect. So I'm going to show textures again, rendering, show textures. And just do one double check through here, so make sure that all my file names are sort of normal and that I don't have any sort of ones that stand out, such as checkerboards or some kind of Lambert or Blinn, because I'm not using those as I'm using the Arnold renderer. And I'm just checking through them all. And this is how you go ahead and get a, and they're all good, a sort of cleaned up file. So we've gone through the outliner, we've gone through the hypergraph connections to clean out our materials and our textures. Render partition. So these are other things in here we could go through and clean up, but not 100% necessary. And in fact, a lot of these I would stay away from this one, but I'm going to go ahead and clean it up and see if anything happens with my scene and when I render it, just as a curiosity. I don't have a sword Fong. I don't have a Lambert. I don't have anything sword 1. And in fact, I wouldn't doubt if I went through this and just do Arnold render just to see what happens. I wouldn't doubt if I deleted like almost all of those, if anything bad would happen. Oh, so now you'll see that I obviously did something wrong, which I'm really glad happened. I'm tapping escape on my keyboard to pause it, and that's because in here in my general editor, Hypergraph Connections, option or rendering, show shading groups, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the ones that I did, just in case I deleted it early on, and just run a test render just to make sure. So that one's sort of like a guess and check, because you would need to make sure that all your textures are working right with it. But anyway, that's how you clean up a file. Let me pause this. So that's basically how you clean up a file, to clean out your outliner. And if you want to do this, I have this in a separate lab coming up, but I will show you one last thing. If you want to do groups to sort of clean out your I'll leave it as 0, 1 GRP. So I'm gonna just group these by pressing Control G after I select them all, holding Shift, or Edit Group, and then I'm gonna rename it according to what it is with GRP at the end for group. So these are the books shelf 01 or books 01 you could do, and then this one will be the same thing, except we're going to make this one 02, and the next one Control G 03. So now you see I've just broken these down into different groups. So I could do that for everything if I really wanted to, and group these and call this crates GRP. And I would only do it for like objects of the same thing. Control G, swords GRP, and you can go ahead like that. Now if you wanted to select everything in one group, what you do is you select one object in that group and just tap up on the keyboard on your arrow keys, and that'll select the entire group. Now every time by default you create a group, the pivot point will go to the origin, so you're going to want to do a modify center pivot on all of these. I'm going to tap G for last tool used, and these ones don't really necessarily I mean, having it there is fine, but I don't really want these, to be honest. I just wanted to show you as an example. Just the books, because the books are a lot of objects, and that's just to sort of keep it pretty clean. And you can even do like groups and subgroups. So if I were to do all these and do books so that's books and bookshelf for me, GRP. So now I have all of those, and I'll just do, oh, those are just the books. I meant to also grab the bookshelf and then do a Control G, and they name this bookshelf plus books GRP, something like that. Oh, you can't even do pluses in here because it's, never mind. So bookshelf books GRP. So that I know that's both objects, and now I've got that all together. And I'm going to do an edit or modify center pivot, and now in here, if I open this up, I've got the three sort of subgroups in there. So I can tap on one and select all of them using the arrow key, and if I tap up again, it's going to select all of them. So it's a pretty useful thing. And then in here, the last thing I'm going to do is delete these layers, because I mean I don't want, if anything, I'll go ahead and you can always check to see if there's anything on the layer by going here. It'll say select objects, but it doesn't there. And delete layer and delete layer. And that's another way I could sort everything. So if I wanted all my books, instead of using groups, and I just use layer, create layer from selected, I can do it this way too. And I label it layer because I have bookshelf books GRP as a name, and then it would just say something like you cannot name it this, or it would automatically rename it. And then now I've got it just like so. So if I wanted to have my bookshelf in there, visible or not, I could do it that way too. So just an FYI. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that. That's sort of cleaning up and organizing a scene. And then again, if you do come back and do the Hypergraph Connections, I would do a test render like after each one just to quickly see if it turned pink or purple. And that's because you deleted the shading group partition for it. So you can go ahead and clean this up, but this one I would be very careful with. Anyway, if you have any messages or any questions, shoot me a message. I hope this was helpful, and that's sort of cleaning up and organizing a scene in Maya. Thanks for watching.